Good evening, and welcome to the Clarksville-Montgomery County School Superintendent Interview. Today is Tuesday, May 3rd, and our first interviewee is Dr. Angela Huff, who is the first of 4 interviewees we will have for this position. To all who see these proceedings, I bring you greetings from our school board. Dr. Huff, we want to thank you for applying for this position, and we want you to relax and to share with us your best answers. The way this is going to be conducted is various board members will ask you questions, and once we complete it, we have an hour and a half to actually complete this entire process. So we ask that as you give your answers, just be as concise as possible. Are you ready to proceed?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I will start off. We are glad that you are interested in our Director of Schools position. What specifically attracts you to Clarksville and the Clarksville-Montgomery County school system?
First, I'd like to say thank you all for this opportunity to interview with you today. It has been an honor to be the Interim Director of Schools since June, and I thank you for helping me in that honor, and I appreciate the time that I have with you this evening. So what initially attracted me to this position, my husband and I relocated to Tennessee in 2018, and at that time I thought I was going to retire, but then I realized that I still had more fuel left in my tank, and that I wanted to look and see where I could provide value to a school district in the state of Tennessee. I met with many superintendents just to see what it was all about in their particular district. And then a friend of mine told me about a chief of staff opening in Clarksville-Montgomery County School System. And I thought about that for a quick moment, and I said, well, the position I just retired from in Georgia was a chief of staff position. So I felt like it might be a great position for me to interview for, so I applied. And as I was going through the district website, I was able to see all the things that were going on in Clarksville-Montgomery County school system. So what initially attracted me to the school system was first the chief of staff position. Secondly was the innovation that I was able to see on the website, just looking at all the different programs at high schools and all the different things that were going on in the school system that were enticing to me, that were items that, strategies and programs that I wanted to be a part of. And then lastly, looking at the board and how you operated and the structure that you utilized on your board, that also attracted me. So those were the reasons why I decided that I wanted to relocate and apply for CMCSS.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Ms. Beard, can you hear in the back? Everyone here in the back? Okay, thank you.
What do you consider to be the major strengths that you would bring to this position?
Well, first let me say that you all have 4 finalists that are very well capable and very well qualified to do this position. For me, I feel like I bring a balanced leadership to this district if I were chosen, and by that I mean that my experiences have been unique. I've served as a teacher, and so I would bring that classroom perspective to decisions. I've also served as a district leader, and I would bring that perspective, as well as a principal. And so I think that when you have those different experiences, it helps you as you make decisions, because you're looking at it through a different lens. You're not just looking at it through one lens, but multiple lenses. So I feel like my experiences have been very unique, and it allows me to really think about a problem and how I'm going to solve that problem, because I'm looking at it through a teacher's eyes, as well as through a principal eye, as well as through a district level eye. And I believe that that is just something that everyone doesn't have. The other thing that I think that is a strength for me is that I'm already established in this school district. I have built relationships in this district with internal and external stakeholders. I passed out to you a transition plan that I'd like to utilize if I'm chosen for this position. And if you'll take a look at the first page there, underneath the title that has introduction, there is a list there of things that I feel as though have been items of celebration during my term as the interim director of schools in working with a talented team of staff members. And so a few of those I would just like to highlight. We've achieved a tremendous growth in student achievement following the 2021 intensive summer school programming that occurred last summer. Also navigated through the pandemic with keeping schools open for in-person learning and opened a CMCSS K-12 virtual school. Also addressed critical bus driver shortages by investing ESSER dollars and reallocating the budget for sign-on bonuses and extra route stipends and referral awards to improve efficiency and effectiveness. Also facilitated the application of ESSER, our ESSER funding, and all the things that we were able to accomplish with that. And also ensured effective collaboration with County Commission to provide funding for the Kirkwood complex. And additionally, supported staff at CMCSS will continue to outperform the state on key academic annual measurable objectives. So many of those things I was able to accomplish along with the team. And I feel like that makes me stand apart as a strength. And the other thing I feel is a strength for me is that I've done the job for 10 months. And I don't think that any other candidate that comes before you can say that they have done this particular job. Thank you.
Dr. Huff, how does your philosophy of education align with our school district?
So if I think about our mission, which is to educate and empower students to reach their potential, I go back and I think about when I was a classroom teacher. And consistently, the principal would tell me, okay, Angela, I'm going to give you the students that no one else feels like they can teach. And at first, I thought about that and I said, wow, why am I getting that? Why is she giving these students to me? But it was really a blessing in disguise. Because what it taught me is that students can learn. It depends on who you have in front of them. So when I answer the question, what is my philosophy? My philosophy is all students can learn, and students will learn depending upon what we do. So if we place a teacher, an effective teacher in front of our students consistently, all students will learn. So that is my philosophy, that everyone can learn if we do it consistently, and we also provide the resources that those teachers need to be able to be successful. That's what I found to be in my personal experience as a classroom teacher, and so that has been my philosophy ever since.
Okay.
Before you bring your question, can I ask the sound? Can you turn her mic down just a hair because we got feedback whistle? And that should correct it. Thank you.
That was my fault, I asked him to turn it up, so I apologize. We got you going.
If you're selected director of the Montgomery County School System, would you make Montgomery County your place of residence if it's not already?
Yes, sir.
Give us an example of when you changed your mind and taken a different course of action as a result of listening to others, either professionally or personally.
So with my leadership style, I'm a very collaborative leader, and I seek to achieve consensus and all of that in my leadership style. So this year, there have been a few times when I've changed my mind on something that I've stated to our senior leadership team and our executive cabinet. But one thing that, one decision that I feel like is the one that I would share, Mr. Garland, is this year we adjusted our public participation policy. Initially, when I first started in this position in June, My intention was not to change the public participation policy or not to recommend the change for the policy. But after listening to staff members and even some of you, as well as listening to parents making their pleas during public comment, to be able to have time to share before the board on items that were not specifically on the agenda. Listening to that and the other comments from staff and from a few of you, that made me change my mind and made me want to look at how can we accommodate stakeholders that want to come to our board meetings and provide comment to our board members. And so that's an example, Mr. Garland, of when I changed my mind. And I think that, going through COVID and going through the pandemic, it isolated many of us. And so our parents felt isolated from us. And I thought that this would be an easy way to be able to mend fences and allow the opportunity for our parents to come in and other stakeholders to come in and make a public comment to us and extend that time from 3 minutes to 5 minutes. Thank you.
Dr. Huff, in your administration, what avenues are open for you to listen to the concern of employees, students, parents, and the community? How would you plan to have time available for all involved?
Yes, sir. Currently, what we have available and what I involve myself in is we have communication groups within our district. One of the communication groups is our classified rep group. And those staff members are our bookkeepers, secretaries, bus drivers, cafeteria workers. And I meet with them once a month. And at those meetings, they bring up whatever concerns they want to bring. And I answer those questions with the information to their particular issue or whatever their concern is. And so that's a monthly time that I'm in front of them. Also, we have the very same kind of meeting with our teachers. We have a teacher communication group where they can also bring concerns. That group is facilitated by our curriculum and instruction team. And sometimes on occasion, there are questions that group would like to ask me that I have to participate in and create and work with them to answer their questions. Another group that we have is our Parent Advisory Council. I facilitate that group. I've been facilitating that group since I've been in CMCSS, so this is my 4th year with that group. And with that particular group, they have questions and concerns as well. And that's my opportunity to provide feedback to them, provide reports to them, share with them what's going on in the district with that communication group. Additionally, I meet with the teacher organizations, CMCEA and PET, once a month, along with Janine Johnson and Sean Imperatrice. And that's a time when those 2 teacher organizations can provide questions to us ahead of time for us to answer. And for us to just dialogue. There have been different things that we've talked about, excuse me, in those meetings with our teacher organizations where it has caused us to make some changes in some of the policies and some of the practices that we have. And so those are invaluable opportunities to be in front of those different communication groups. Additionally, there are parent and staff surveys and employee surveys that go out. And that survey data is monitored by me, by certain staff members, and we look at that and we're able to take that data and be able to make whatever changes we need to make or go and ask further questions as it relates to the data that we're gathering. In addition to that group, I also meet with the Chamber of Commerce to share information with the Chamber of Commerce or even answer concerns that Chamber of Commerce members may have. In addition to that, meeting with the mayors. Both mayors, the city mayor and the county mayor. We talk about what problems are, if we need more sidewalks, if we need more security officers, whatever it is. If we need more crossing guards, all those conversations are held when I meet with the mayors. So those are the different things that that I do to be able to listen to the concerns of employees, staff, and community. And as far as how I handle those or how those are scheduled, they're on my calendar, so they're not meetings that are that I'm not ready for. They're already on my calendar. There have been a couple of times when I've had a few meetings with the mayors that were not on the calendar, but typically the meetings are already on my calendar.
Thank you.
Dr. Huff, what have you done to help the public understand the needs and success of your school system?
So again, going through those communication groups, sharing those communications with our teachers, our parents, our classified staff, making sure that we're utilizing those avenues to communicate the successes. Additionally, at the beginning of the school year, I participated in several podcasts and spoke at different churches. Also met with the Sunrise Rotary Club, which was very interesting because it truly was sunrise. But meeting with them to share our successes, as well as our Education Foundation Board, meeting with them to share the successes of our school system. This year was our first time that I had a state of the school system report to our community, and our Chamber of Commerce sponsored that at one of our local churches. And so that was an opportunity for us to share what's going on in our school system, share the successes, share the concerns, but being able to have that for our community. And that is something that I've decided that we're going to have on an annual basis so that we can make sure that we're communicating what the state of the school system is. Also, that information for successes is also on our website for our stakeholders to be able to see, and also at monthly board meetings where we're sharing our board reports. And in those board reports, it's not just the positive things that are going on, but also the challenges, the next steps, the things that we need to do to go further in our board reports to you all. And additionally, just recently, I did a few videos, and I've done videos throughout the year, but recently I did videos advertising our Know Your Own program and our teacher apprenticeship program with Chiefs for Change, as well as with our state.
Dr. Huff, how would you measure your success as director of schools?
I would measure my success, according to our board policy, I have 13 narrative standards that are within policy governance, our limitations. And so I would start there with evaluating my success as far as how I am completing those executive limitations, what's being done within those limitations, as well as the ends statements for policy governance. Also, I would meet with board members weekly in my conversations with you for you to share with me how things going. What things do you need me to improve upon? What suggestions do you have for me? I would have those meetings with you weekly. And then also I would constantly monitor feedback that we have on the website from our surveys. What I'd like to do is ask our staff, if I'm chosen for this position, to add questions to our surveys such as, how is the director doing? What are the strengths of the director? What are the weaknesses of the director? What signs of improvement would you like to suggest for the director? But having those questions as a part of our surveys that we send out to staff and students and parents, and getting that feedback is another way to be able to monitor my success as a director. And also looking at how I'm meeting the strategic work, the strategic goals.
Dr. Huff, since you have been in education as a teacher and administrator, how have you observed changes in student behaviors? And would you plan to address student discipline and reduce disruptions in the classroom, as well as provide a safe environment for both staff and students?
Yes, ma'am. Well, I started teaching back in the 80s, so I'm kind of dating myself. And I had student misbehavior, but not at the level where it is now. Behavior has escalated, and it's at a point, it's at a critical point right now, where it is, when I look at the data and observe that data, I know that there are changes that need to be made. I've looked at the data from elementary, middle, and high school. I see a continual uptick in my middle school numbers when I look at their data. And so I realized that in this, what's going on in the country at this time, reaching consensus and working toward a common goal has become increasingly difficult to do in our country somewhat. And so we see that in our schools with our students. And so it's very critical that we address that issue. And in combating these problems, I know clearly that we're stronger and better if we all do it together. We can't do it in silos. We have to be together in this to make this change. So what I'd like to do is, with student behavior, if we have students that have been suspended or remanded or zero tolerance or whatever, when those students get ready to come back to school, what I'd like to do is have that parent come back with that child. And we write a plan for what is going to be the success plan for that student going forward. Very similar to what we do in our truancy program. When we have students that are truant excessively, there's a parent plan that the parents have to sign, the school has to sign, everyone has to sign to indicate that we are serious about this. So I'd like to look at doing something like that, so when students are suspended or remanded or expelled or what have you, that they don't just walk back into our buildings, but they walk back into our buildings with a plan that's been communicated with the staff and the parent. Also, I will partner with our sheriff and our police department, which we've already done, but I want to continue that. I met with Sheriff Husan last week, as well as our police department, to look at ways that we can be proactive in handling behavior, and also understanding what our roles are as school leaders as it relates to the sheriff's department and the police department. Some of the things that we've talked about is if we're having staff meetings with a parent or a guardian, that we choose safe places to have those meetings. Also, that we look at de-escalation training for our staff and working with the police department and our sheriff's department to do that. Also, I have updated the visitors policy to truly define what your responsibilities are and expectations are when you come to our campus, what we expect of you. And also what I'm planning right now is scheduling meetings with our district attorney and our local judges, just to talk about, okay, if one of my students comes to you, what does that look like? What will happen if they come to you? If one of my parents come to you, what will that look like when they come to you? Next year, at the beginning of the year, we're going to do communication. We've talked about this with the sheriff's department and the police department. We're going to provide communication to all of our families. Our schools will do this, our principals will do this, but providing the communication of what the expectations are when they come into our buildings, what the expectations are for behavior. And then also sharing that information, not just at the beginning of the year, but also throughout the year, because we have parents that may not be with us at the beginning of the year, they come a few months later. So continually communicating that information so a parent can't say or a student can't say that they did not know. Sheriff Husan is making a part of his budget to increase the SROs by 7. If that happens, then we will have 1-to-1 SROs in our building. Right now, our middle and our high schools have SROs, and some have more than one SRO, but many of our elementary schools share an SRO. So if Sheriff Husan gets those additional SROs, I would look forward to having a 1-to-1 SRO in our buildings. As you all know, that we had an incident a few weeks ago, and we did not have an SRO in that building. That probably would have been prevented if we would have had an SRO in that building. So I'm looking forward to that being approved in the budget. The other thing that we talked about as a staff that I will do is we're going to form a database to track behaviors of our students so that we know what kind of behaviors are being exhibited, and so that we can follow how many of those behaviors are happening, be it bullying, be it fighting, whatever it is, being able to track those behaviors with a database. And as you know, as of last night, we shared with you an update to our student code of conduct, where we have stricter guidelines, stricter consequences that will occur with our students. If you will take a look at the transition plan that I gave you on the last page, you will see one of my area of focuses is student safety. And it says review student discipline data and adjust the student code of conduct accordingly. Maintain social and emotional health supports for our students and examine wraparound supports for our students. So those are some of the things that I would look at for student safety as it relates to making sure that we have an environment to reduce the disruption in our school atmosphere.
Dr. Huff, this board's focus is on student achievement, and if selected as a director, what steps would you take to ensure academic excellence in the school system and to recover from the learning loss due to the COVID-19 disruption?
So first of all, ensuring that we have high quality teaching and learning in our classrooms, ensuring that that continues for our students. Also ensuring that we are retaining and recruiting the best teachers for our students, and providing and supporting the implementation of those high quality instructional materials. We did have a learning loss for some of our students. And when looking at the data for that, we saw that we're having that loss in math, as well as in English and language arts reading. That's where we're seeing that loss. And so what I would do is I would strategize with the academic team and look at ways for providing different additional learning opportunities. One of the things would be high dosage tutoring, utilizing that high dosage tutoring in schools, before at school, after school, and during the school day, and having that occur at least 3 times a day with those students that have exhibited that they have a loss with their learning. Also, I would monitor those data trends, those academic data trends that our students are sharing with us as far as where their losses are, and making sure that we're closing those gaps that we're seeing with our students. And so that would mean that our staff would need to receive the professional learning that would be advantageous for them to be able to address the gaps that they're seeing in the classroom. The new law that Governor Lee signed yesterday for the student-based spending formula, when that comes into play, which will not be this coming school year, but the following school year, it will allow us to look at unique learning needs of our students and being able to provide for those unique learning needs, and being able to use the monies that are associated with the TISA bill and really kind of individualize our instruction based upon what our students need. So I'm looking forward to that when that occurs. Also looking at summer school and after school for our students, and making sure that we're tying up those loose ends. And the other day I was doing a school visit at one of our elementary schools. And when I go in, I'm looking to see how we're looking at our data and how they're tracking with our data. And this particular principal had a data wall. And on that data wall was individual student information and their growth. And so what she had there was where they started, where they are right now, and where they need to go. And so the principal shared with me that not only in this data room does she go in and look at the data, but when her teachers are having their planning time, they also are in that room. So they're looking at that data. So I know that's happening at more than one school because I see it at more than one school when I'm on my visits, but those data walls are so important because it helps you as a school, as a school staff to be able to look at that data. And we're also doing the very same thing at the district level. Thank you.
Dr. Huff, what plan would you implement to recruit, retain a quality, diverse, and talented group of teachers and employees?
So I would continue with our Grow Your Own plan program, our Grow Your Own program, because that is bringing about a lot of diversity within our school district. You know from the report that you saw the other evening that our student population is around 50%, 52% or so diverse, minority, but our staff does not look like our student population. And so when we first started the Grow Your Own program, it was to be able to handle making sure that we were increasing the level of diversity in our schools. So I would want to continue with that, as well as continuing and helping to grow our teacher apprenticeship program. Also, I would like to look at reconnecting with our historically Black colleges and universities to make sure that we're having job fairs there and also recruiting teachers from there. But not just those universities, but all universities, to make sure that we're getting the best and the brightest. Additionally, we will have a diversity mentor program that I'm very encouraged by and very excited about with that diversity mentor program, because we will have mentors, diversity mentors, diverse mentors, working with our minority first and second year teachers to ensure that their path is seamless as they walk this journey in being a classroom teacher. So that will be one of my major focuses. And then our State Board of Education started this school year with requiring every school district to have a diversity educator plan that we have drafted up. I've been a part of that so that we can make sure that we're meeting that requirement of our State Board of Education. If you look in your transition plan that I shared with you, if you look on the very last page, there's an item there, area of focus, it says staff retention and recruitment. And what I have there is enhancing workplace climate through feedback collection to help improve morale and increase retention, review staff salary schedules, and identify and leverage employee strengths to increase momentum towards continuous improvement.
Dr. Huff, in the current high-pressure environment for teachers, how will you relieve some of the pressure so that they can do their jobs more effectively?
So I recall as a teacher having so much on my plate and trying to be able to do all the things that need to be done. And that is still something that is continuous right now. And so I realize the value that we have in our teachers. And it's very critical that we're able to not put so much on them. And teacher organizations that I meet with, CMCEA and PET, they've mentioned that before, and trying to look at ways to reduce some of that load. What I would like to do is I would like to get a sampling of elementary schools, middle schools, high school, and do an audit and look through how much the teachers are responsible for doing. Actually making a list of what their requirements are, their responsibilities are at their schools. Taking a look at that list at the district level and looking and see what from that list can we alleviate? What is it? Do we have to do every single thing that is being required of our teaching staff? We need to have our teaching staff available to meet the needs of our students and to be able to close these achievement gaps that we have. And so we need to make sure that they are not being required to do so many things that they can't accomplish the most important thing, which is our students and making sure that they're educated. So I would love to just look at it and see what the data reveals with that sampling of schools, and look and see at the district level what we might can alleviate from the list.
Can we just do away with all lesson plans?
I think they would love that.
That's what I'm hearing. Thank you. Our student body is different than pre-COVID-19. Students and teachers have different needs. What will you do to create an atmosphere in the schools that will lead to educational excellence and a positive experience while being mindful of and addressing these changing needs for our students and staff?
So I have to go back and look at, when you talk about our student body looks different from COVID-19. I have to go back. On March 13, 2020 was when we closed school. And at that point, we had remote instruction, we had packets of homework, and children were home. And then that next school year, about 60% of our students were in person, and about 40% of our students were home, working virtually. First semester. Second semester, we saw a little bit of a shift where 70% of our students were in person and 30% of our students were learning virtually. This year, we have 97% of our students in our buildings, and 3% are at our K-12 virtual school. So what I have seen this year with having that many students back in the building, I have seen an increase in emotional and social and emotional and mental issues that have been going on with our students. Also, our teachers are feeling more challenged and sometimes burnt out. And misbehavior is prominent. And so what I see in that is that we have our students back in our buildings, but we have to start over and we have to reacclimate our students to structure, what the expectations are, what they were pre-COVID, and making sure we're reminding our students of that, making sure that we are following our behavior plans, our individual behavior plans that we have school by school, making sure we're following those consistently and those expectations. So one of the things that we have done is that, and you know this board, we've utilized some of our federal funding to be able to address our social and emotional needs of our students. We've also used our federal funds to hire more social workers and more counselors for our students. And so reacclimating our students to the structure of the building and doing that consistently, I believe will help in that, Mr. Patterson, because our students will know what the expectations are, they will get those expectations consistently, and then they will be able to do the work that they need to do. Also, I understand with our students that I can't just look at the academic side, I have to look at the social and emotional side. So it's making sure that the whole child is ready for school and ready to operate as they should, as well as our teachers, and giving them the supports that they need so that they can be successful in meeting the needs that our students have.
Dr. Huff, how will you ensure students, staff, volunteers, the community, and the school board members are engaged in the development and implementation of your long-range goals and strategies for the school system?
So I would utilize our communication groups that I spoke to you about earlier, our classified group, our teacher group, our student group, and our parent group, and making sure that they are aware of what our goals are, but also getting their feedback. And getting their feedback as far as determining what our goals should be. When we send out our surveys, we're asking for that information so that they can be a part of that. But also sharing our mid-year review data with those groups. And so that they can see the areas that we feel are areas that we may be struggling in, areas that we want to identify for our next year's strategic work. So just sharing that information with those persons, our students, our parents, our staffs, our volunteers, as well as our board members. Involving everyone in those surveys is one of our strategies, but what I continue to hear from some of our stakeholders is that they also want to have in-person time. They want to be able to come and share with us face-to-face as well as during our surveys. So what I would look at, if I'm chosen as director, I would look at maybe creating open office hours where stakeholders can come and share whatever it is that they would like to share that I need to know as it relates to long-range planning. Also, looking at the possibility of having some kind of town halls to be able to hear from the public regarding long-range plans for our school system, and continue to use social media effectively as we plan for the school district. So I would do all of that in determining how to share information and also having those bodies to help with our long-range plan.
Dr. Huff, CMCSS has always been a leader in education and innovation in the state of Tennessee. What is your vision to continue that leadership role?
So currently, I'm a member of the Mid-Cumberland Superintendent's Council, and those are superintendents that are around in this area: Rutherford, Robertson, Franklin, Metro. I'm not thinking of the others right now, but continuing to be a member of that group as we dialogue with each other and looking at the ways to make our school systems better. So continuing that group, also continuing to be a member of TOSS, which is Tennessee Organizations of State School Superintendents. Continuing to work with the leadership in TOSS and continue to strengthen those relationships. Also, I will continue to refine our Grow Your Own program. Because that is one program that has gone out to our state, has also gone out nationally, so continue to refine that, and our teacher apprenticeship program. Innovation-wise, starting something new, I would like to begin preliminary conversations on career exploration at our middle school level. We have high school programs, we have academic programs at each of our high schools, but I want to start looking at having those conversations and to see what we might do in our middle schools as well, and align it to our high schools, but possibly looking at our middle schools and take the time and speaking to our community and listening to see what industry voices are saying and what our community voices are saying as it relates to trying to create something in our middle schools. Because I know it's a heavy lift. It was a heavy lift in getting it all in each of our high schools, but at least beginning to have the conversations of how we might incorporate that in our middle schools would be innovative. But I know that you can't just do that. You have to have the conversations about it and look at the pros and the cons of that. Also, I'd like to look at our Spanish immersion program. Our Spanish immersion program is extremely popular. Our curriculum team has done a great job with our Spanish immersion program. And so what I'd like to do is take a poll and see if there's a need to create any other language. Do we stick with Spanish, or can we keep Spanish and go with another language as well? Not really for sure, but I think it would be worth polling our community and polling our stakeholders and working with the curriculum department to see if that is something that we can look into to just investigate. Also, I'd like to research bringing esports to our school, to our high schools. We have a lot of students that are interested in esports. And as you've probably seen national television, there's lots of scholarship monies that come with esports. And that's where you see kids playing the games. You all know what I'm talking about? Okay. Well, students are getting scholarship money for those kinds of things. So formalizing that and seeing if that might be something we can bring into our high school. So really just researching that with our technology team. We did attend a conference earlier this year, an esports conference, to look at what that could possibly look like in our school system. So just investigating that further and to see where it takes us. At Kirkwood High School, when it opens, it's going to have a focus on logistics and diesel mechanics. And so possibly those diesel mechanics, by going through that program, can be employees of ours later on in CMCSS. So kind of like a pipeline. And another pipeline. So we're looking forward to possibly having that. So those are some innovative things that I've thought about that I would like to look into.
Thank you.
Dr. Huff, CMCSS board operates under policy governance. What is your experience with governance, and how comfortable are you operating in policy governance system?
I've had the opportunity, the grand opportunity to work under policy governance for the last 4 years. And in my previous district, we worked under a different protocol. I had not even heard of policy governance until I began to do my research about CMCSS when I applied for the position here. And that's when I learned about the board and the way that you operate. And so for me, policy governance, this system is more effective and less contentious. I feel like it keeps the board and the staff on track with what our responsibilities are. And it's a way to help organize our board and organize staff. And it operates for me in all the different things that are required in policy governance with the end statements, the executive limitations, with the GPs and the board staff linkages. What it provides for me is a typical day in our school district and how we operate in our school district. Policy governance fits very well with the operation of the school district and with the board. Thank you.
Dr. Huff, tell us about the most important decision you've made in your last or your current position, and how did you involve the people who would be affected by that decision?
There have been a lot of important decisions in these. I think I'm in my 10th month now. There have been a lot with rezoning and the charter and mask, no mask, wearing mask. So one of the things that I thought about that has been, I feel, my most important decision is when I first started in this position, what I decided was I wanted to ensure that I developed a better working relationship with our external stakeholders, specifically our commission members and our mayors. I wanted to make sure that that I ensured that those relationships were stronger. So our commission members and our mayors, and so with that, what I have found is that more often than not, those relationships are now stronger. I have regular meetings with Mayor Durrett and Mayor Pitts. I also work well with the commission members. And so I felt that it was important to strengthen those relationships because there are so many things that we will have to go to the commission for, so many things that we'll have to talk to the mayor about, and so we need to have strong relationships. And so for me, that was my most important decision because having those strong relationships transcends all the work that we do in this district. And if you don't have those strong relationships, you're not going to be able to accomplish the things that you need to accomplish. Today, we presented our budget before the county commission, and that budget was approved by the budget committee. Those were the relationships that we built. Our budget will be on the consent agenda at the next meeting. Those are the relationships that we built. So I feel like the most important decision that I've made is ensuring that staff understand that we have to have strong relationships with those bodies. And so with our operations team, you can ask Mr. Brumley, he'll tell you that I talk to him about that all the time. You can ask Chris Renaud, our chief financial officer, that I talk to him about that all the time. The relationships and the strengthening of those relationships is what helps our district to go even further. So that's my most important decision. Thank you.
How would you make certain that the public knows and supports what's happening in our schools?
I think that, one of the things that I can do, Mr. Griffith, a couple of things that I can do is making myself available for community forums and being able to share what's happening in our schools. Also, making sure that I am fully utilizing social media to indicate and announce all the things that are happening in our schools. Keeping our district website and our school websites current, as well as utilizing School Messenger Our school messenger sends out calls, texts, and emails to our parents, so making sure that we're sending those messages out so everyone knows what is going on. And also, I mentioned earlier, having open office hours to be able to share with our public, and also having gatherings for our community, joining in some of the meetings that they may have, and making sure that we're making those announcements of all the things that are going on in our school system. I think that you can never over-communicate. You can never. We have to be transparent, and we have to share what is going on in our school system so that everyone that needs to know knows. And we have to be responsible for telling our own story and not allowing others to tell our story. But we tell our story. We're in charge of it. We know it. We tell our story. So making sure that we're doing those things. Also working with our local media and sharing that information with them. We send out an email where a lot of our local media knows what's going on in our district, so ensure that those things are going out in a timely manner to announce everything that's happening in our system.
Dr. Huff, have you been successful in getting strong parental and community support for a school program or district? Tell us about one such success.
So we've gotten a lot of strong support for our Grow Your Own and our apprenticeship program, but I'll talk about one that has not really been highlighted lately, but it was one that I actually built when I came into the system, and that's our enrollment center. When I first got hired in CMCSS, I was charged with creating and opening an enrollment center. And so that center is over on the Greenwood campus. And so I oversaw the build out of that program, I developed the processes and the flow of that program. And so the enrollment program is a centralized place where our parents can come and enroll their students. They can enroll their elementary, middle, high school student. If we have a parent that has multiple children, if they come to the enrollment center, they can do it all in one place, as opposed to going from school to school to enroll their children. Also, what we have done is created in that enrollment center electronic transcripts. So as a part of the enrollment center, we have the record center. And in that record center are all of our students' records. And so when colleges need transcripts from students, students can now request those electronically. When I first started in this district, it was only paper, and you just got a piece of paper, you come over there physically, fill out the paper, and then we get it back to you. So one of the first things I heard from this board, one of the first things I heard was, can we make that electronic some kind of way? And so we've been able to do that. And so now you can request that electronically. What we're looking at now with the help of ESSER funds is now being able to digitize all of those student records so that we don't have all the notebooks and all the carousels with all the files, but have it digital. So that is one program that I was able to create and be able to see it as a successful program. And I'm listing it as a successful program to answer the question because the feedback that we get from parents that actually utilize the enrollment center has been positive. And so it has been a success.
The enrollment center seems like it's a one-stop shopping.
Yes, sir.
We just need to make sure, and I'm sure you have advertised it, to make sure everybody can take advantage of it. Explain how you develop a school system budget. You touched on this somewhat, and tell us who you would involve and how you would involve them.
Yes, sir. So for the school system budget, the CFO and the director of schools meet initially to discuss the expectations and the timeline of the budget. And then the CFO provides a timeline to the staff for the budget review process. Then each cabinet member reviews with their department and their department staff, and then they begin to prioritize the needs and the wants from that particular department. And then that chief in that department schedules a meeting with our CFO to go over that list of needs and wants with our CFO. Then the CFO, after meeting with every single chief, the CFO brings the proposed budget to our senior leadership team. And then we go through another phase of prioritizing and looking at what do we need to keep, what do we need to take away, or what can be handled in a different fund other than general purpose. As you heard Mr. Renaud say a lot, that he has 7 different checkbooks. And so all those different accounts looking to see where they may fit if it's not general purpose. So we do that in our senior leadership team. And then after the final budget has been approved by myself and the cabinet members, then the CFO this year arranged one-to-one meetings with you if you wanted to have that, to be able to review the budget. After that, this year, what we did was we placed information on our website where we could get feedback from our community as it related to the budget. What do you feel about it? What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? And looking at that feedback and considering that feedback in the budget process. And then after we gathered that feedback, and then after Mr. Renaud and myself looked at that feedback, then the proposed budget was shared with the board. That's the next step. And then after the board approves the budget, then the budget goes to the county budget committee, which it went today. And then after that, then that budget is on the county's consent agenda for their consideration. So those are the steps that we take for budget.
Dr. Huff, our board is dependent upon the county commission to fund the budget. How would you propose to gain their support of the budget?
One of the things I'd like to change in our process with our county commission is introducing the budget to them sooner so that they can see kind of what we're thinking, just being transparent and clear with them. That way they have that knowledge up front and they know what we're expecting or what we're thinking we want to propose in our budget. So I've worked with Mr. Renaud to look at how we might can put that in our process for next year, is how we can work with our county commission early on, letting them see what we're thinking about, of course, after the board has seen that. But I also want to increase the transparency in the budget process with our commission and continue to strengthen and build those relationships with our commission. This year we worked very closely with those commission members that are on the budget committee so that they understood our process, they understood what we were looking at as it related to increases for our staff. And we wanted to share that information with them so that when we did come to them with our budget, it wouldn't be a total surprise. Also, our CFO, Mr. Renaud, has worked throughout this school year with the CFO for the county to ensure that we're all on the same page and that we're all aware of what is going on. So the two of them have regular meetings. That was something that Mr. Renaud and I talked about early on with building those relationships and how we needed to do that. And so that was one piece of that, making sure that Mr. Renaud is meeting with the person over on the county side. And also when our commissioners come to our meetings, our board meetings, when they have comments, when they make comments, what we do with those comments, or what I do with those comments, is I respond to those comments in an email, and I send that email to Mayor Durrett, and I ask Mayor Durrett to send my answer to the entire commission so that they are aware of what the answer is to the comment that a commissioner may have made in our board meeting. The other thing that I feel is important with the commission in working with them in funding our budget is my presence at the budget meetings. It's very important that I'm there and that our CFO is there and any other staff member and also you. But I feel like my presence is very important so they can see the school system represented. So I'm at the budget meetings, I'm also at the informal and the formal commission meetings. So the school district is present.
Dr. Huff, High-performing students and accountability are priorities for our schools. How will you assess the district's current levels of performance, programs effectiveness, and teacher effectiveness?
So as far as the district levels of performance, what I would do is there are benchmark assessments that we give to our students. And those benchmark assessments determine how well our students are doing on units. And so I would look at those assessments, look at that data. Also, there are universal screeners that are provided to our students 3 times per year. And so I would look at those, as well as data chats that are happening at schools. And so those data chats with staff members, as well as the curriculum team going out and facilitating those data chats. And those data chats help us to determine if the interventions that we're using are the right interventions. And so I would look at those, also participate in those. I participated in one a few weeks ago, and it was very exciting. Also utilizing our midterm exams and our final exams. That's another way of looking at district success and looking at ways to be able to make sure we're closing up any of those gaps that we need to close up. And also utilizing our SAVERS data, and that's our social and emotional piece for our students, and making sure that we're capturing all those things that we need to capture. So that would be the district, what I would look at the district level. As far as evaluating the effectiveness of the programs, that would be ongoing, evaluating programs to ensure their effectiveness. It's very important that you consistently monitor the programs, because there may be some things about programs that we need to change. And there may be things about programs that we need to add to. And so I want to make sure that we're doing that. And then the teacher effectiveness, the teachers are evaluated on a team rubrics. It's a state rubric, and those are observations, and they're also evaluated on instructional organization within their classrooms. And teachers get a refinement area that they have to work on as a part of that team evaluation. And also with the teacher effectiveness, looking at the literacy walks, which is the language arts walks, the reading walks, the math walks, looking at that data. I would look at that to ensure that what's supposed to be happening in classrooms is happening in classrooms. And then the other piece about that, as far as looking at how we consistently have high-performing areas in our school system, is also making sure our parents are aware that they have access to Power School. And in Power School, they can see their students' homework, assignments, their grades, their absences, everything about the student. Parents can see that. And so that's another way for parents to be able to guide their students' instruction, call teachers and ask questions, or just follow up on how their student is doing. So utilizing that Power School data and making sure parents remember that they have access to Power School.
Thank you.
Dr. Huff, give some specific examples of actions you have taken as a teacher or administrator that you think contributed to making your faculty or staff an effective team? And how would you build support for that change, even in the face of opposition?
So I'll talk about 3 different experiences that I've had. The first one would be when I was a principal. One of the schools where I served as principal was a high-achieving school. One of those schools, high-achieving school. And in that school, the staff members always touted about their high test scores and how well their students were performing. And so when I got to that school, I began to look at the data and disaggregated that data down to male, female, down to how well students were performing in each of the subject areas, and also looked at how regular ed students were performing and special needs students were performing, and also other pieces of data, but totally disaggregated that data. And the staff did not want me to do that, so they were very opposed to me doing that. But what I had learned prior to becoming the principal of that school was only until you disaggregate the data can you really understand the picture, because data never lies. It just tells the truth. It never lies. And so when I disaggregated that data, even though the school overall had very high test scores, there was a segment of students in that school that was not meeting the needs. And when I shared that data with the staff, initially they were very opposed, but when they saw that data, they were very surprised, because they didn't realize that since they were making all these high overarching scores, that they were forgetting a group of students. And so what we began to do from that point going forward was planning for those students, ensuring that we were meeting those gaps for those students. We also brought our parents in and shared with our parents the data. Parents were shocked. Again, this was a high achieving school. Parents were shocked. But when they saw the data, again, data doesn't lie. It only tells the truth. And so having that data to stand on helped that opposition to go away from those staff members. And what it helped to do was it helped to grow that staff to begin to look at everything as it related to a student. So teachers' planning time became different. Teachers' scheduling became different. Parents became different. It affected the entire school, because we realized that we were not addressing an issue that now, since we know that information, we have to pay attention to it. One thing about me is when I know something, you've told me something, I have to do something about it. I can't just ignore it. I have to do something about it, because now I know, so I have to do something. So that really helped in that situation for that school. So that's one example. Another example, a second school where I was principal was a Title I school, so a low-performing school. And in that school, what I decided to do was work with the staff, and I asked them, tell me what are the needs in this school? What do you see that are most significant in this school? How can I help with that? Number one, they said our students are coming to school hungry. Well, you know, students can't learn if they're hungry, right? Number two, they talked about parents don't come out for our PTA meetings. Number three, they said that the students are not performing well on their academics, specifically reading. So what I did with that was we began to have parent meetings at apartment clubhouses because parents weren't coming to the PTA meetings. So we went to the parents. And that's how we had our PTA meetings. Parents also complained that they didn't have anyone to watch their children, or they couldn't, they had to work all day, so when they got home, they had to feed their kids and then go to bed. So what we did with that was we fed our families, and we also provided care for our children, the children that the parents said they didn't have daycare for. We provided the care for those students so that our parents could participate in the PTA meetings. So we had to change the way that we did things to accommodate our staff. I'm sorry, not our staff, but our families. The school staff was initially opposed to that because that would require thinking outside the box. But once they saw the feedback that they got from the parents, and once they saw behaviors changing in students because we were caring more about the students and not ourselves, then the teachers came on board because they realized it was something good. And there's something about when you do something good for somebody, it makes you feel good too. And so that helped in that situation at that school. And so to this day, that school is still doing those kinds of things where they're going out and having PTA meetings and sometimes bringing people in. The last example is when I was an assistant superintendent in my former district. An assistant superintendent in that district is very similar to what our level directors are here. In that position, I supervised elementary principals, middle school principals, and high school principals. So that's who I was in charge of. Here, you know, we have an elementary level director, a middle school level director, and a high school level director. Well, I had all three levels. But I only had experience in elementary, but I was supervising middle and high school principals. So when I got that job, of course, my middle and high school principals are thinking, why does she have this job? She's never worked in middle school or high school. Why is she supervising us? Good question, right? But leadership is leadership. Leadership is leadership. So what I was able to do in those schools, I had 17 schools, like I said. The scores, the test scores in some of those schools had gone down really low. And so I knew that what I needed to do is look at the data. I needed to disaggregate the data in those schools. And so what occurred was I used the very same strategy that I used with the first example that I gave you with the school that was high performing. I used that strategy with some of the schools that I was supervising as an assistant superintendent. And I shared with the principals that this is the data, this is what your data is showing. We need to pay attention to this data. And so once I disaggregated the data for them and with them, they were able to see what things they were not able to do with their students and how they needed to change their staff, change their professional development, and what adjustments they needed to make. Doing all of those things brought those principals around, because then they realized, okay, she may not have had experience in middle and or high school, but she knows what she's doing. And so they were initially opposed, but they came around and realized that a good strategy is a good strategy, and it's going to help your students succeed, because at the end of the day, it's all about our students.
Dr. Huff, explain what you've done to build and to maintain a good relationship with your board and our administrative staff.
I feel like with this board, what I've been able to do is be very transparent with you and build relationships. And I think what's so important in a director of schools role with the board is having a trusting relationship, a trusting, transparent, open relationship. And I believe that I've built that with each of you. Also, I think that checking in with you each week on Mondays is a strategy that I appreciate, having those conversations with you. And I believe that it's something that is of value for us. And so I think that that continues to build our relationship. Also, providing a weekly update to you of district happenings, what's going on in our district, sharing that information with you on Fridays so that you know what is happening. And typically, sometimes during the week, you may get an emergency message from me where there may have been a fire at a school, or there may have been some kind of issue at a school. But I always want to make sure that I'm communicating to you so that you don't hear about something when you're out in the grocery store and you don't have any knowledge about it. So it's important to me that I notify you about what is going on so that you are aware and you're a well-informed board. That is critical to me. So those are things I believe that I've done to build the relationships with board members. For staff members, I have a one-to-one meeting with each of my chiefs every single week. And they share whatever needs to be shared. They tell me what's going on in their departments. And then we make plans. I make plans with them. I provide guidance to them on steps that they may want to take within their departments. And so I believe for the staff, that continues to build our relationships as well. And also do the same thing with our principals. I meet with them monthly to maintain good relationships with principals, as well as school visits with principals. And so just doing a lot of gathering the feedback and doing a lot of listening because that helps in making decisions going forward for our district. Thank you.
How would you work with your board to be effective, make good decisions, and be respected as a board by the community?
I think some of the things that I just mentioned, I mean, working with the board for the community, ensuring that those decisions that we make that we're making those decisions based on the data or what information is telling us. It's very critical that we're making decisions that are important decisions, those decisions that will be best for kids, decisions that will be best for our teachers. So I think that I would ensure that I'm doing that with board members to keep the message going with what's most important for our school system.
And thank you, Dr. Huff, for your candor and your answers. At this time, we're going to take a brief recess.